Welcome everyone who has joined today for our workshop on how to build your career in customer success roles. And very excited to do this session with Karan, Bathija and Bharath Jagannath. Both of them are experts, are veterans in customer success fields. I think both of them have been award-winning customer success managers. That says something, right? I mean, there are a lot of people out there who are currently in this role, and very few are selected for these kind of accolades. And both of them have done that. I personally have spoken to Karan at length and Bharath also previously, and know that they feel very passionate about this field and want to help a lot of other people get the clarity to understand what this role entails, and how you can really break into this field that's growing remarkably. So, before we dive in, just a quick round of intros. I'll just get started by sharing what I do, and then I'll turn it over to Karan and Bharath to introduce themselves quickly as well. So for those of you who don't know me, I am the founder of Pivot, and at Pivot, what we do is help people make career transitions when they're changing their domain or industry. A lot of times that might involve a complete transition of your entire role, of your entire industry. Other times it might be more about just leveling up your career, going from, let's say, an IC role to a manager or a leadership level role. And those are also inflection points that we specialize in helping people with. We've been doing this for about 3 years. We have almost close to 5,000 people who have used our platform to navigate their transitions. And we'll talk more about Pivot, about what we do, how we help people transition throughout the course of this conversation. But before that, I want to turn it over to Bharath. Bharath, welcome again, and thanks for being here. It'd be great maybe if you can just share, few high-level nuggets about your journey so far in your career and how you've become a customer success manager.
Yeah, Arjun, firstly, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here, seeing a lot of folks from the community and especially the folks who are aspiring to get into customer success. My journey has been kind of interesting because I started off in a support role, then went into lead generation, which in today's world they call as SDRs, and then did some little bit of business development, then again got into support. And my second stint in the support role is what took me to customer success. And the funny thing is I'm an accidental CSM, right? So 2017 is when customer success as a role was booming. And the founder of the company where I worked decided to change our designations from product specialists to customer success managers. And to be very honest, I cluelessly, I performed my role as a customer success manager for a year. And towards the tail end of that journey is when I realized what customer success actually does. And never looked back after that. Been in customer success for about 6.5 years now. I've been in multiple different roles inside of customer success. Been IC, I have scaled teams from 0 to 1. And currently, this is my first time working in the ops and strategy side of things. Throughout the journey, I've had amazing experience working with folks on the GTM side of things. And in my current role at Zluri as the senior manager of ops and strategy, I get to cross paths with literally every single department. So again, I mean, in the course of the session, I will definitely highlight more things at depth. But yeah, that's pretty much about me. Thank you.
Great, thanks for sharing that. Turn it over to Karan. Karan, are you there? And if possible, please switch on your camera as well.
Yeah, hi Arjun. I am here. I think I'm just having connection issues, which is why I turned it off. But can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. I think we were able to hear you earlier as well. There was just a very, very slight lag. So maybe we can give it another shot, Karan. And then if it's still causing issues, we'll let you know.
Sure, perfect. Okay, so you guys see me as well?
Yes, all good.
Okay, great. So my journey started out a little bit different from Bharath's. I started out in business development. Back in the day, I think everything was business development, like even a little bit of marketing, a little bit of sales, everything fell under that. And so I started out in BD, spent quite a bit of time in that. I also became a founder. I spent some time doing pre-sales at Oracle, kind of bounced around a lot, and it's a typical use case for a pivot, pivot customer really, because my career has taken many turns, and everything from from sales to business dev, pre-sales, uh, to a little bit of marketing, a little bit of everything that a founder does, and then finally kind of landed up in customer success. And really, that's because of the SaaS space that I ended up in customer success. I was doing sales in a quite a small startup actually, and leading the sales function, the global sales function. We were selling into like 170 different countries, but what we saw is that we wanted to increase the LTV. We didn't know it at the time, but we had a lot of new customers, repeat customers just by accident. We didn't have a proper CS motion, so that's kind of where I started shifting my focus a little bit to say that let's get value out of current customers. Then I moved into that company got acquired, and I moved into another one, which was kind of again accidentally grandfathered into a role where I was doing enterprise sales. Once again, I found that we didn't have a process for CS, and so I started exhibiting behaviors, if you will, that would enable the CS function to really flourish. And that's when I finally officially got hired into my next company and my next role as an AVP of CS, and started looking at churn and all of those great metrics besides retention. So yeah, that's been my journey, and it's been really interesting, a lot of fun. I think a lot of learning along the way, and I think that's the way it needs to be for anybody.
Brilliant. Awesome. So I think both of you have made sort of a pivot or a transition into the customer success role. And I think that probably holds true for a lot of professionals who work in this field today. And that's one of the primary reasons we are even doing this session today, because we do get more and more number of folks coming to us, asking us about what customer success really entails and whether it's a good fit for them. Some of them may have had a bit of flavor of customer success, either through customer service roles or through account management roles or SDR roles, or different types of roles. So, and there's a lot of clutter in people's minds and out there with regard to exactly how this customer success role differentiates versus all these other roles that seem to be tangentially related somewhat, but there are differences as well. So I think it would be great if we can start on that front. And I would love to have Bharath, your opinion first with regard to just the core responsibilities and future career trajectories that customer success professionals can expect. Also, the second part of the question, feel free to take it up later, is that a lot of times people assume that these roles primarily exist within tech companies, within startups. Is this a role that primarily is housed within such environments, or does it also exist in non-tech industries and large and mature companies outside of startup environment as well?
Absolutely, Arjun. So before I kind of get into answering that question, I want to take a step back and tell folks here on the call what actually got me excited about customer success when I accidentally got into it, right? So when I was in my support role, and back in those days, sales folks were always celebrated, right? And and the main reason behind that was those were the guys who were bringing in the revenue, and most of the other functions were always looked at as a cost center. When I started reading about customer success and learning more and more, I realized that customer success is a role where your core focus is not around selling while you are bringing in revenue, right? And along with that, you are getting to do a lot of other things, which is consulting, which could be market research, which could be advocacy effort. And along the process of all of these things, you're getting to collaborate with cross-functional teams. So for me, the main reason to get into customer success was the learning scope was huge, right? And I never felt that, hey, it's been 5 years, 6 years, and I never felt stagnant about what I was learning and where I was at. And secondly, I also got to be a part of a revenue function, right? And that I would say is a blessing in today's day, because if you look at the macroeconomics and the state of current things, a lot of layoffs are happening. A lot of companies are trying to cut costs wherever they can. If you are in a role which directly relates to revenue, you will still be much more safer compared to other roles. And that's what I've seen across orgs, right? But again, I wouldn't say that customer success folks don't get laid off, but still they would probably be at a higher level in the pyramid of things. And second thing, from a career perspective, again, you can evolve in multiple ways in customer success, right? So today in our organization, inside of customer success org, we have about 8 different teams, right? And a lot of folks might not even be aware of the fact that customer success is an org, and then customer success managers are one of the sub functions inside the org, right? So we have implementation teams, customer success managers, professional services team. There is technical account management. There is support and there is ops and strategy. There is partner success. So inside of customer success itself, you have so many things to explore, evolve over a period of time. And again, you can decide if you want to grow as a principal CFM or a principal individual within the team, or do you want to take up roles which give you managerial exposure as well. So from a function point of view, there is so much of dynamic things to explore, grow over a period of time. And ultimately, you are adding value to the company day in and day out, not only through revenue from renewals, but also expansion while working with account management teams and so on.
That's great, and thanks for sharing the sort of the incentive impetus for your why behind why you joined customer success. I think that is actually very helpful, because I think that's the stage a lot of people are at, trying to understand if they are a good fit. And sometimes you need to understand not just the the information related to role responsibilities, but really what makes people come alive in these roles. So why do they actually look forward to working in customer success? I think that's very helpful. Karan, would love your thoughts with regard to some of the other aspects of the question that I had mentioned, right? Feel free to chime in on the same things that Bharath also mentioned, but I specifically want to understand a little bit more around that startup versus larger mature company environment where these roles exist. Is it true? Is it just a myth that startups have more customer success roles? And secondly, what is the, let's say, average career progression that people can expect, given that this is a relatively new domain, but it's sort of piggybacking off a lot of the prior roles that have existed, as we discussed?
Sure, Arjun. Yeah, so I think the idea that startups have more roles than mature companies, it's just those roles are more visible, right? Because in mature companies, you have tons of hiring, right? You have like 1,000 roles people are hiring for. And so CS roles seem much smaller in comparison, like the number of those roles seem much lesser. But yeah, it again depends on which kind of company we're talking about, right? So if looking at the SaaS space, relationship-based or subscription-based businesses, in that you definitely need CS a lot more than in something like, maybe like a D2C company, right? Like I'm your shoes, and maybe I don't need to talk to you about those shoes for the next year or so, right? And then I can sell you some more shoes. But in SaaS business, that isn't the case. We keep having new feature releases. We have new, and those feature releases also, we kind of the customer is informing the product, right? And so what happens is my customer tell me what they really want from my product, and then I go back to my product team, my tech team, and see how to make that happen. So you really listen to your customer a lot, and the feature releases are very, very often startup when you're building, when you're trying to find in MVP stage, right? You just need to talk to your customers, understand what features they are looking for. So your CS person becomes really, really important at that. Even as you mature, the usage of that product, right? The usage of the product changes dramatically over time. Sometimes you would see that, especially in the enterprise space, you'll see that the person that buys your solution is not necessarily the one that's using it. And then even the person that's using it may change over time. right? And then their solutions kind of lying over there unused. So you need to not just multi-thread win the account, but also be ready to help them understand the value of your product, the value that it brings to their ecosystem, and so on. So, a customer success manager is going to be a role that not just is super important today, but it's going to become more and more important as more and more SaaS businesses come into play. But also other businesses are trying to understand, like outside of the tech space, they're trying to understand how to use the same or similar metrics, and try and see how a manager can help them better serve their own customers, right? So if you think of hospitality, for instance, you have a lot of hotels that will remember who you are, right? When you check in, they like, oh, the last time we gave you this room and this kind of meal that you requested, and they'll actually remember all of this stuff for you. That is not a support function, right? That's really a customer success function. Because they know their customer, they want to serve them better, they want them to have the best possible experience, right? So within customer success, again, there's customer experience, which is another piece that we can talk about. But the idea is to help your customer derive the maximum value from your product. And it's very apparent in a startup space. And it's, because everybody's monitoring everything constantly. But as you mature as a company, those roles will start and have specialists for each of those areas. You may have an onboarding specialist, somebody who's really good with QBRs and implementation. Someone who's great with presenting data could be the account manager, and they could potentially help you with the upsell and the cross sell. So yeah, there are many different roles, but typically in a startup, a CSM will wear multiple hats. He's going to do things off the get-go, and depending on how senior. So some companies will hire bottom up. So you'll start with a little junior person, help them evolve in their career with your company, or progress in their career with your company. And in that case, you would start as like maybe an associate and then a senior associate. Then you could become a manager, maybe senior manager, assistant director, director, and so on, right? AVP, VP. Ultimately, you could even become the chief customer officer or a commercial officer, depending on how mature the org becomes and how much of an commercial impact your role has had within that org. And but in a startup space is a really great space to learn all of the ropes as well. So if somebody's looking to pivot into customer success, I would definitely recommend doing something in a startup space. It doesn't have to be a really small startup, but it needs to be small enough that they can learn the different aspects of the role, right? So it can learn on the job. They could also go get certified, but the best way to do it is to learn on the job.
Perfect. I think one of the things both of you have highlighted here is the fact that customer success professionals wear multiple hats, and that you get to engage with people from different divisions and get to learn a lot, because you have your internal stakeholders as well as external stakeholders. So it's not a siloed role. In fact, it's a very collaborative and multi-hat wearing sort of a role. And when that happens, typically I've seen that the variety or the breadth of skills that you need to be able to perform in a role kind of expand as well, because if you're dealing with more people, everybody has their own priorities, and sometimes those priorities can be conflicting priorities, right? For example, let's say you're working with customers, they are telling you that they need certain product feature, and internally the product team doesn't feel like that's the feature they should be building, or perhaps the prioritization of that feature should happen differently than what the customers are telling you. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because when you are at the center of a multi-stakeholder arrangement, you need sort of a multi-skill set portfolio to navigate that kind of situation, to be able to do well in your job. So Bharath, wanted to understand from your perspective, firstly, am I right, or am I just completely making this up? Do you need multi-skill set portfolio to be able to do well? And if so, what are some of the most crucial skills you think that people need today to be able to succeed in a customer success role?
Right. So I think one thing is that you don't need to have a multi-skill set portfolio, but you need to have the right attitude and intent towards getting there, right? So if I'm going to start up in customer success, it's very hard for me to get that exposure, especially if I'm a fresher or 1 or 2 years in my career. So the main criteria for success is to have that open mind and not just stick to a tunnel vision, and be open-minded to learn, collaborate, and work in harmony with a lot of other stakeholders in the organization. While this sounds exciting, there are two sides to it, right? So one is that the exposure is there, the learning curve is there, it's exciting, it's not mundane. But the other side of it is that it can get a little bit overwhelming at times, right? And there could be burnouts, there could be frustration and whatnot. But I think that's a part and parcel of any role that you might be working on. If you are on a growth trajectory, or if you are looking or aspiring to have that hockey stick growth in your career. From a customer success point of view, I would say lot of times people fail is because of lack of prioritization and focus. And I would probably put it across with an example, right? So a liter of petrol or a 25-liter can of water, both would cost the same, right? But the effort to pick up a bottle of petrol or versus the effort to pick up a can is much more difficult, right? Now, similarly, if I have a portfolio of say 20 accounts, and I'm going to have the same level of service or same level of strategy across my book of accounts, then I would tend to burn out quite fast, because everyone has 24 hours in a day. While if I'm able to segregate by, let's say, ARR, by the strategic nature of the account, potential expansion on that account, and then work with stakeholders accordingly. Because if I go to product team and tell them that, hey, this request is urgent for every single customer, over a period of time, people will stop taking me seriously, right? So you have to kind of pick your battles wisely. You need to prioritize, and then you kind of build a case across different stakeholders. That way, you are able to ensure that you are retaining major chunk of your portfolio, keeping them happy, and then from potential expansion customers, you are able to kind of build your NRR numbers over a period of time. And along with that, obviously there's a lot of relationship building, not just external but internal as well. So you need to understand that, hey, it's not only take. You also have to figure out how do you make other stakeholders successful. How do you call out appreciations for people who have helped you throughout the journey? How do you kind of make them understand what are your KPIs? How do you understand what are their KPIs, and then try to work in tandem? So these are a couple of things that I would personally say that would help someone be successful in a customer success kind of a role. But again, going back to the first point, it's not necessary that they have exposure to all of these things. But again, they need to be aware that potentially I might be wearing 10 different hats in the organization, and that's not a bad thing. But over a period of time, you need to pick and choose those 2 or 3 items, like Karan said. As the company grows, as the company matures, you need to become a specialist from a generalist, and that's what will take you to the next level.
Got it. That's helpful. And thanks for clarifying that in terms of, skill requirements. I think, it's interesting to hear that perspective that, you don't necessarily need all of these skills. A lot of times we hear, the current job market is so competitive. There's so many people applying for the same role that you need to be that ideal candidate that employers are looking for. And when you look at the JDs, right, they have this plethora of requirements that they have put down there, bucket list of, the technical skills and the soft skills, and then the good to haves as well, in addition to all those must haves. It kind of becomes almost a game of, okay, how many boxes am I checking here to be really able to stand out from the crowd? So I think having a professional who has been working in the field kind of demystify this is helpful. Karan, I want to get your opinion on the same topic, right? What are the most important skills, but also with a slight inclination towards focusing on what technical skills or technical proficiency do you need in these roles as well? Because a lot of times, as we are discussing, these roles exist within tech industries or startups, which are essentially tech-enabled companies. So we do see a lot of times people without a tech background or engineering background also work in these roles. So obviously, it seems like it's not just a tech-focused role, but again, there is confusion and clutter around this. So if you can highlight what kind of tech skills can help a person, if they are needed at all or not, would be very helpful as well.
Yeah, sure, Arjun. So I think I have a slightly different opinion about what skills you need. I think in any role you would need certain skills that are not readily available with everybody in your company, right? So that's what makes you important to that role. And so what I would say is that, like for instance, with customer success, I think everybody talks about empathy, right? Everybody says, oh, you need to have empathy, you need to be able to put yourself in your customer's shoes. And that's true to a really high degree. That's true. You need to have genuine empathy, right? You need to feel the customer's pain to actually do something about it. This is why I think doctors I think they take that oath, right? That, hey, I'm going to help anybody who needs me. So the customer success manager really needs to be like, hey, my customer is going to need me, and I'm going to do everything I can to help this person. Now, if that means rallying the troops within your own company and uh, being the guy who coordinates everything with the different functions to help this person, then that's what you end up doing, right? Um, as far as prioritization goes, like Bharath said, it's super important to be able to prioritize when you need to do something and for whom. And then how to get it done really is about people management, right? It's about understanding that your organization may be structured in some manner, and this is internally even, right? It's not even on the customer side, it's completely internal, where you say that, hey, this is how my organization is structured formally, but there is an informal hierarchy that exists, right? Every team has that person who gets things done. And so they may not be the team leader, they may not be the manager or the head of that department, but they are the go-to person. And for you to recognize that and appreciate them for that, and then be able to talk to them and say that, hey, you need to get this done because it's helping you, it's helping me. Show them it's a win-win everybody, right? And to be able to do that is really a people management skill. So I think a little bit of leadership, a little bit of that kind of prioritization, being able to figure out who you need to speak to and when, get things done for your customer, and that's really going to help you succeed. But as far as tech skills go, those can be learned very easily, and that will differ from every industry vertical that you go into. So I came from a marketing tech background most recently, right? And so I did to upskill myself in that space is I went and got certified in digital marketing, right? And that wasn't required on my job. It wasn't something that people asked me to do. I just had access to some really good courses, and I said, let me just go ahead and take them because I wanted to speak the language of my customer, right? And so when they could feel that I understood them, that was the highest kind of way of showing my empathy for them. Like, hey, I know what you're dealing with, and so I can help you because I've learned X, Y, Z that's required. So that really was my way to display the empathy or show them that I really care about their business and their day-to-day work and operations. So that's something that you can really do. And besides that, you don't really need any tech skills, but I think data analysis is super important because um, you want to try and understand whatever data is coming from your customer success platform, from your CRM. You want to be able to pull reports, do all of that stuff, and kind of understand where you stand as a business, but also where you stand with that particular account. And then to when it comes to actually acting on that data, you need to be able to present it in some that's easy to understand for everybody. So maybe like data visualization, like Tableau or Power BI or something, could be helpful to you as well. Yeah, but those are the skills I would recommend. Besides that, I think just on focus on learn more about your industry, more about your customers' industry, and I think you should be fine.
Got it.
Arjun,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, since this is an interesting topic, I just want to take a minute more. And in terms of the checklist that you said, right, in the JD, I would say that till date, I have not had a job which I've got match more than 6 parameters in the JD. So, and this is something that I'm talking from the LinkedIn matching that happens, right? So if someone's having 10 on 10, I think that's just as mythical as a unicorn. The thing that a hiring manager looks for is, are the fundamentals in place? Is the person having the right attitude, and are they open to learn things? And do they fit in culturally? Right? As long as these 3 things happen, the will side of thing is managed. So it's only the skill that needs upskilling. So it's just a matter of 1 month or versus 3 months of training. But the end result or the outcome for that candidate is going to be amazing. So I would say that technical skills, product knowledge, domain experience, all of these things are good to have. What would get you a job is being a pro at networking, putting across your background to people more elaborately, because your resume can only speak so much, right? And it has to be formal. So get outside your resume and then put it a bit more casually. Talk to people and understand what that company does. So you can talk to existing people in the customer success team over there, or people who have worked in the past in that company. And that would again give you an understanding, or that would give the hiring manager understanding that you've taken that effort to research about the company, about the product, etc. And that's typically what a customer success manager is supposed to do, right? Research about their customers before going on a call, etc. So these are a couple of things that I would say would kind of give the confidence and motivate people to go ahead and apply a job, even where they are just ticking 5 boxes or 4 boxes.
Got it. Got it. That's helpful, Bharath. I think, especially the part around, the JD and what kind of requirements are typically put in there versus the reality of the current job market. I think it's helpful to get your take on that. One of the questions we frequently get, and this is definitely for customer success, but sometimes for other roles as well, is when people are making a transition, right? A lot of times you don't have many of the skills that employers are looking for, right? You might have certain transferable skills. I'm sure both of you did, in terms of, perhaps just knowing how to speak with clients, or understanding products, tracking data, all of these kind of things. But there are, I'm sure, certain gaps as well that you had to bridge before you transitioned, or right around the time of transition. There must have been certain things which you felt that you were unequipped, or ill-equipped to handle. So did you all, and Karan, maybe we can get your take on this first. Did you take any specific course or get a certification in customer success, or a related domain, to showcase your commitment to this field, or to just enhance your knowledge base with regard to customer success? This is a pretty common question that we get.
Yeah, so I've spoken to a couple of people on Pivot as well, right? And I got this question too. Said, hey, what certification can I take to become a CSM, or learn more about CS? So there are definitely courses out there. I don't recommend anything really. There's probably just the one which I've recommended, which was this really basic level of understanding of CS. Just gives you the insight on what the different areas are, and it's a paid course. It's like less than $10, right? But it's very basic and like on surface level, right? So I don't recommend these kind of courses, because they're more for the course creator than they are for you to understand the field. So I think you can do a better job by just going on YouTube and following some good CS leaders, and just listening to some of their webinars, attending webinars like this one. You learn a lot more just by doing that. And I think one of the harder things about career transitions is you're always doing it from a back foot, right? Because you feel like an outsider, you feel like you don't belong, and so you're always worried about, hey, am I good enough, am I doing enough? And so to me, that's actually a superpower, because like when Bharath was saying, the person's intent and their will to learn and to do more, right? It's much higher when you're coming from for lack of a better term, a place of adversity, right? Because you don't belong in that industry. It's a new industry. It's a new kind of work that you're going to be doing. So you put in more effort when you have to come in from there, right? So at least with me, what I saw is that I transitioned from travel technology um, to marketing tech, and then went into HR tech and back into marketing tech, right? So I had a chance to kind of look at these different spaces, all in SaaS businesses, and what I found was that across the board, right? I mean, I needed to scale up in terms of product and industry knowledge and the way things were done in those industries. But as far as like learning some new technical skills and really applying those to the job. It wasn't really a requirement, but if you did it, it would definitely help you. Because we had things like in marketing tech, especially, we had ways to help your customer that you could God mode into the account, right? You could actually go in on the back end, look at the account, and help them through their own dashboard. And so you wanted to be an expert at your own product so that you could actually help them with it. You could also come up with creative ways of using the product, which they still have not kind of thought of. And that's where your playbooks come into play, where you've actually thought of, for this industry, these are the different things that you could be doing using our product. And a lot of accounts will do probably like 20% or 30% of that, especially because when you're selling, you want to close and you don't want to keep selling. So the salesperson will not tell the customer that you can also do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other things other than what you want to do with our solution. So it's up to the success person to actually help them utilize the product to its fullest potential, and to expand that in a very creative way, right? And the account also expands, you get more from that customer, and you have more impact because of that within the org as well. I don't know if that answers your question. Maybe it's a very long answer, but I hope that
No, I
helps.
think it does. It obviously covered a lot of ground besides the question that I had asked specifically, but I think it's helpful for people to understand those nuances because, a lot of times the answer is not always black and white that yes, you need to have this kind of a certification or, you don't need anything. But I think the way you touched upon the different ways that these different skills can add value in your job, I think it's ultimately up to people to decide whether they should be taking up certain type of a upskilling before they transition or at the time they transition. I think it's not a one size fit all, it sounds like. But Bharath would like to rope you into this particular topic as well, because again, this is an important one, but then we are starting to get a lot of questions from the audience here, so I would love to start taking up those as well.
It's so disclaimer before I begin is that I'm not against certifications. But what I would recommend to folks here is that get a certification for you to learn and understand more about customer success or any other field for the matter of fact. But don't get a certification to just stamp it on your resume and get through the first level of interview process, right? Because what it would do is it would just bloat your top line of applications. So you might get through the first round where HR finds it fascinating that, wow, you're CCM certified and or you've done multiple other courses. But how do you tackle the fact when you are in a technical round or you're talking with someone who's a veteran in customer success space? You do throw around some fancy words like LTV, ARPU, and then ARR, NRR, etc. But what happens when they ask you to explain those terminologies, right? So if you are not aware of the concept fundamentally, then no matter what certificates you get, it's just a piece of paper or probably a document that you have in your mailbox, right? It's nothing more than that. From my personal point of view, I would say, like Karan said, watch a lot of videos, webinars, etc. I personally, when I started understanding the difference between support and success, I spent 100+ hours on looking at videos, and this is like free content, right? And that's just gold lying there on YouTube, on other podcast platforms, which you can go listen, consume. And you are not limiting yourself to a specific framework of education, I would say. It's rather more open-ended. The reach is much larger. You get exposure about different verticals of SaaS. You get exposure of different regions, different roles within customer success, and so on. Right. So, and it's so easily available. So my recommendation to folks would be learn through about the fundamentals, get the job first, and then invest on upskilling so that you're able to do well in the job, right? And that's probably the best way to go about, because once you kind of take up those courses as a commitment, it's very much time consuming. So if you're doing a job parallelly, you would have to spend, say, 4 to 5 hours every weekend to get that, right? So if you're not going to be mentally present while doing those courses and you're just going to mug up things, then it's not going to add much value.
Yeah. Yeah, I think both of the answers have somewhat clarified, I think, the the fact that you don't necessarily need a certification, but there are certain avenues for upskilling where you can consume, very educative content on some of the free resource platforms, or perhaps there are one or two certifications, I think, Karan, that you pointed out, that can be looked into. And then I think it becomes very personalized to each individual, depending on how much perhaps exposure they've had in similar roles versus not. Um, so, I want to talk about job search and, how to navigate the current job market. But like I said, there are a couple of questions that I've gotten directly from the audience here, and some of them are shared within the group chat as well. So the first question that we have is a question for Bharath, and this one is from Manpreet. So the question is around, transitioning from product role to a CS role. I think we may have touched upon this briefly, but what are some of the transferable skills that worked for you, Bharath, on day one when you transitioned into CS role? And what were some of the new skills that you had to gain to be successful in the role? I know you did touch upon this briefly, but if you can maybe just highlight, exactly what you think would help Manpreet, that would be very helpful.
Right. So being in a product environment, in a support role, my core competence was around having the product knowledge, knowing every nook and corner about the product, and being able to kind of answer things independently to the customer. So whenever I went on a call with a customer, I always came across as an expert, may be product or the domain. Right. And whenever customer is coming on a call, it might be a 30 minutes call or a 1 hour call. They want to get ROI even out of that 30 minutes or 1 hour, right? They want to make sure that that call is of some value. And if you come across as someone who does not understand the product or the domain, then the customer is never again going to show up on the call. Even if they do, they're not going to be that interested in talking with you. Right. So that was one of the important skills that I was able to carry through while I transitioned into customer success. I would say there was a plethora of things that I had to upskill. And one of the key thing was to move from a reactive mindset to a proactive mindset, right? So that's where a lot of researching, that's where a lot of relationship building, getting more domain knowledge from a macroeconomic level. And then learning about revenue, right? And I think that's the one of the key pillars in customer success. Why do you need customer success? Learning that why behind that. And I'll just probably double click on the why in a very short manner, right? So today we are in a subscription economy, and the amount of distraction people have, given the huge amount of competitors that we have floating around, is very high. So if you're not able to add value in these discussions, or maybe in a QBR or in a face-to-face meetups, customers are not going to see value coming in from the product because you're not focusing on the outcomes that they're looking for. And ultimately, they would end up churning, right? And today, the change management process is so simple that I can just shut off one system and then move on to a new system. So given the potential leakage in your organization's revenue, customer success becomes a very pivotal role, right? And one is that certain churns are not inevitable, so you cannot retain 100% of your customers all the time, right? So just to ensure that you are kind of compensating for the churn, you have to have that sales mentality. I wouldn't say core sales mentality, but being commercial minded, right? Having some focus towards the amount that the customer is paying. Are they getting equivalent value for the amount that they're paying? How can we kind of take them from X to Y as a revenue coming from them? Because that's how you can go to a better NRR over a period of time. So I would say all of these things I'm able to say today because I've seen multiple different scenarios. I've worked with customers across different regions, and I've had the pleasure of working with some amazing leaders across the CS community. But you will kind of get those things over a period of time, and it also depends on your company's maturity, the product that you are working on. It could be a B2B or a B2C. It could be a services company. So once you kind of, and again, since we are on a pivot call, pivot becomes the most important thing, right? If you are stuck to one framework, if you're stuck to one mindset, it's very difficult for any individual to kind of grow and excel in that role. So you have to keep looking at the changing dynamics of things in the market and start implementing, experimenting, and make sure to fail fast, right? So if you fail fast, then you can try more new things and then kind of get to the optimal stage of things.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very comprehensive answer, Bharath. Thanks for sharing that. I hope that was helpful, Manpreet. So I think I'd quickly move on to the next one because, just in the interest of time, I'd like to cover as many questions as we can from people and also talk about job search a little bit. So, Karan, the next question is for you, and this one is from Venkat. And this is a very interesting question. I feel like you must have heard this one before. So his question is that he's primarily from an IT services delivery background and currently at a mid-senior management level. What would be your advice for an introverted technical person like me to be successful at a more customer-facing, customer success type of a role, especially for somebody who needs time to understand and deep dive on things, as opposed to coming up with quick turnaround or quick kind of multiple choice answers for clients to choose from in a short span of time. So that's more of a personality trait or a personal skill kind of a question. How do you feel that people who might have slightly more introverted bent of nature, is there something that they need to do differently to succeed in this role, and whether they can actually even succeed in this role?
So I really like this question, and I did somebody pivot asked me this as well. This was an introverted person, and she was very worried about, can I succeed in this kind of role, right? It's customer facing and all of that. So the idea is that obviously we don't want to be nervous when dealing with our customers, because if you go in with a nervous disposition, then the customer also feels like, hey, is this person going to be able to help me or not? At the same time, what you got to think of as an introvert is a very interesting kind of person, right? They're very introspective. So they really have this ability to think about things on a deeper level from most extroverts, right? Who are just like on the surface level, they're really fun around, but are they giving you much value, right? So I think an introvert would be better CSM overall, and that's just my opinion. But I think they would do really well in this field because they have the ability to think on multiple levels for your customer, for your company, and for yourself, right? So, and being concerned about coming up with multiple answers on the fly, that is not a requirement at all, right? We're not magicians. We're not, we don't have wizardry available to us. If there is something that stumps you, if there's a question that comes to you which you don't know the answer to, the solution there is to say, hey, I don't know, but I'll find out, right? And I'll get back to you. And then actually going and doing that. Go talk to whoever you need to, and then get back to the person, send them an email if they need to get on a call with them, that, right? And they would appreciate that a lot more, because you've actually put in a lot of effort to get them the answer rather than just giving them an off-the-cuff reply. So being an introvert is not a bad thing. Being able to give answers on the fly is not necessarily a good thing. Right, so don't worry about it, Venkat. I think you'll be completely fine. And I'll just leave you with one thought. We think of customer-facing roles like, oh, we're going to become friends with the customers and all of that, right? But at the end of the day, we're businesses, and also, they have a business as well, right? So what's more important to me, and this is what I tell all of my teams that I've been a part of, is think of it as competence first and camaraderie next, right? Be competent, be able to help them and do what's required of you and help them succeed. And if you're friendly and have a good disposition and nice to be around at the same time, that's great. You don't need to be with everybody, right? And that's completely fine.
That's, I think, very well put, Karan. I think competence first and camaraderie second. I think a lot of times, especially in Indian environments, without any judgment, at least, having worked in both US and India, I feel like I personally have experienced an environment. By the way, I have a management consulting background, so did 10 years of management consulting. I realized even within India, there are certain cities where personal relationships drive business much more than certain other cities, right? And competence definitely matters. I don't think competence can ever be compromised in a business relationship, because even if you get a new client because of your social skills. To retain that client, you need to be able to perform, because the person who has hired you is answerable to their own clients, right? Whether it's their internal bosses or it might be their own clients. So if you're not performing, their neck is out on the line, and they won't be able to last very long if they're hiring people just based on relationships. I think that clarity is very helpful in especially the Indian environment, at least from my perspective, that you don't need to put camaraderie and social skills at the top. You need to be competent at what you do and help clients achieve their goals. All right, and there's another question which is again from Manpreet, and this is a more theoretical one. So I want to kind of uh, take a slightly more broad broad aspects of this question so that it's relatable for everybody in the room. But his question is more around, if you can give certain examples, because you've been talking so much about like theory and this is what works, this is what doesn't work. It could be very helpful if you can talk about, Bharath, maybe specific incident where, let's say, a client was unhappy because of the company's product or service, right? Or they were severely impacted because of certain things happening within their industry. Basically, a client facing a tough situation where you swooped in and saved the day. How did you do that? What kind of things did you do as a customer success manager to really add value to the client and save the day?
So I have a interesting example for this. And
Bharat, sorry to
was
interject, but just because of the paucity of time, I would love if we can cover this quickly.
yeah. So this was in one of the startups that I was working. We were just about 50 folks organization wide, and we were in midst of a migration from V1 to V2. And what happened is we were not able to map one-to-one every single feature on the previous version to the new version. And once the customer went on to the version 2, we realized that one of the features that was very critical to them was not existing there. Now, this became a reason for the customer to be extremely disappointed and wanted to move out. And again, they were one of our top ARR customers. So it was super important for me as a CSM and for the organization to make sure that they stay back with us. While we wanted to retain them desperately, the product team did not have enough bandwidth, neither did the engineering team have enough bandwidth. So when we asked them to build that particular feature within a month's time, the product team just put their foot down and said that, hey, we're not going to do it. Now, I was stuck in a limbo where I have to save the customer, but product team also has to build that particular feature in order to save the customer. So what we recommended is that, hey, build the MVP for that particular feature. And parallelly, we convince the customer that, hey, while we are building this feature, we want to make sure that we have not built the whole feature and then we get to know that certain things needs to be changed. So why don't we go with the MVP model and then we partner together and you help us design that particular feature over a period of time. So the customer agreed, product was able to kind of release that particular bandwidth to building that MVP. And finally, we were able to retain the customer. So there was a lot of stakeholder management internally and externally. And at the end of the day, we were able to save that customer.
Perfect. Karan, I would love to get your take on the same thing, right? And this would cover one of the other questions as well that I have gotten from Augustine. And I think Augustine's question is more around you're just most complex challenges that you face as a customer success manager, right? Perhaps you can answer that question with some instance or some story from your own career.
Yeah, sure, Rajan. So I'll tell you two quick stories, right? One revolves around onboarding, the other is around retention. So the onboarding story is actually very interesting because we had a customer who had actually purchased our product and they had a previous vendor, right? So they were coming to us from another vendor and they had actually gone past their contract time with that vendor. But before purchasing the product, they didn't really know that they needed to set it up themselves. They needed to do a couple of different things to make sure that everything's working the way that it was with the other vendor. And so when they came to us, they said, hey, I thought this onboarding call was because you guys were going to show us how it's done and kind of do it for us, right? And so on that call, we kind of launched professional services for them, right? Because we said, hey, these guys need our help. They have 3 days days left on the contract, or they've gone past the contract 30 days. And so they were like, hey, our stuff is getting turned off on our website. We really need you to set it up on yours, with your platform. So we launched professional services that evening. And we had this, like the CS team work through the weekend to set it up for them. And then on Monday, we actually launched the entire, setup. Basically, it was online conversion stuff, right? So everything was set up for them within that weekend, and we charged them a pretty penny, right? It was like a rush job. We didn't have that service ready, but we charged them a ton. It was almost the entire ACV was professional services, and then the solution was really, a very small part of that. So I took that call on the call, and I said, we can do it. We have ability, so let's go ahead and do it. So that was one, and then on the the retention side, we had another customer who was an enterprise customer, really, really large. They had like 35 different brands within their portfolio, but they only had like 2 of those brands were using a solution, right? So one of my biggest mandates was how do we get the rest of them to actually, expand their account and get everyone else to use it as well. So I actually flew into the city, and I called for a meeting with all these brand heads, and we had like almost a 5-hour meeting, right? But in that 5-hour meeting, we had the champion. We had a champion of our solution in their company. We kind of showcased his wins that happened with our solution, and then we had the 2 brand managers who were using it also talk about how it's helped them. So we had them kind of sell it on to their colleagues, really, right? So it was really interesting. But what we came up with was like a concept of secondment. So I started sending my team lead into their office 2 days a week, just to start interviews with all of these 35 brand heads, and look at the desired outcomes, right? Whatever they wanted to do in their roles in their part of the business, and then come up with solutions for them. So the team lead would go there, interview them, spend 2 days a week over there, and then come to his team and say that, hey, you're my CSM, you need to work on this for this brand, and you need to work on this for that brand. And we really created like a working team for that particular customer instead of just one account management person. And that really helped us expand the account like almost 4x within that 1 year. Not just retain them, but also expand within that same account as well. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of good insights there. I think the good thing about this session is, apart from many other things, is that we are recording this. And I think what you're sharing is going to be tremendously helpful for a lot of people who may not be in the room today, but would learn a lot from these kind of anecdotes and stories. So just before wrapping up, one final question that I have for you is mostly around job search, right? That is something that we have not directly touched upon so far. And just quickly, what I want to really dive into are items which you feel can really help people at this point in the job market, given that it's more of an employer's market. There's hundreds of applicants for each opening that's out there. So especially if you're making a transition from a different industry, it can really hold you back because you're competing with folks who may have direct experience in that field, right? So both in terms of pivoters or perhaps people who may have just started off their careers, if they're looking for a new role in this current job market, what would your, let's say, top 1 or 2 advice for them would be? Bharath, we can start off with you, and you can really pick your answer here. It could be something as part of the, the resume, or it could be interview preparation, or perhaps something else like, networking and getting referrals. Whatever you think is going to work the best in the current job market.
I would broadly talk about 3 things. One is that when you are making an application, the application goes through ATS for most of the companies these days. So even if it's a small company, it's going to go through ATS, and there are certain prerequisites set up on the ATS which could essentially reject you, though you might have the relevant experience, right? So how do you bypass that? Is by networking with folks in that company. The best people to reach out to would be the HR, the hiring manager, or someone in the C-suite if they are a small organization. Second thing I would say is that get your fundamentals straight. Don't just go with the concepts in mind. Like I said, don't talk about fancy words. Understand what is the underlying underline explanation for those words as well, so that you're able to help gain that trust in the hiring manager's mind that you're not going to take too much time to get up to speed and you know the basic fundamentals of the business and customer success. And the third thing that I would say is that one of the things that I've seen as a constraint in people's mind is the salary, right? A lot of people go ahead and reject job offers because it's just 1 or 2 lakhs lesser than their expectation. But what you need to look at is the opportunity cost loss, right? So let's say if you waited for 6 months to get a job offer, which is just 2 lakhs more than what you were getting earlier, you've essentially lost much more than those 2 lakhs that you're fighting for. So you need to kind of think more about the opportunity cost that you're losing and the amount of time that you're losing in the process. So if you see that something is little lesser than what you're expecting, go for it, hustle a bit more, and then ask for much more, right? Because that way you've delivered value and then you are demanding for that salary. So that would be my few of my suggestions.
No, they're very helpful. I think a lot of the things you shared actually might even be transferable nuggets of wisdom, so to speak, for other roles as well. Karan, same question to you. What do you think really helps people today to land a job, especially when they're making transitions or trying to, achieve a significantly more, let's say, growth-oriented role or senior role within customer success?
So Arjun, I think there's a couple different things at play here, right? One is you're changing your career trajectory entirely. You're moving into customer success as a new role. So, let's assume that you're working in a company which already has a CS function. My recommendation there would be to try to become a part of that function within your own organization, because you've got all the trust, you've got all the history with that company, and maybe you can start doing CS stuff versus whatever else you were doing there, right? You were in administration, HR, whatever process, but you can actually learn from your own colleagues and learn within that company, and that's going to be a much easier transition, a lateral transition. And then if you're coming from like a sales background, for instance, then try to move into account management, because that's more aligned with with what you're already doing than CS or play CS would be. So try to do that first. If you're coming from the outside, you're from, maybe you're not working currently, you're looking to land a job in CS particularly, then I would say first identify certain companies, target companies that you want to work for. And there could be multiple criteria for that, right? Like the size of the company, the stage they're in, and then how mature the CS function is. All of that stuff could matter. And identify those companies and start reaching out to folks on LinkedIn, or try to network with them in some other manner. Maybe even read up on those companies and try to understand more about what they do. Before you even reach out, right? So when you reach out, and you can be very specific with your questions, like, hey, I was looking at this role, I'm really interested in it, I want to understand about, maybe I want to learn more about the culture in the company, do you mind getting on a call really quick? So very simple note like that could start the conversation with people in these target companies. And then those people don't necessarily have to be HR, right? Because everybody reaches out to HR folks. They get like tons and tons of messages which are unrequited. And so my suggestion is to reach out to other folks, maybe in the CS or in the companies, but not even necessarily there, because, in smaller companies, everybody knows each other. So it's easy to kind of reach out to maybe someone in sales or account management and say, can you connect me to a friend who can talk to me about this or whatever. So yeah, just start reaching out and networking with people. Also look at joining communities. There are many online communities available to us. So definitely look at joining these. The CS community at large is very, very inclusive. Everybody is super helpful, and everybody wants to see each other succeed. So that's a great thing. That's a great news. It's not like everybody's holding their playbooks close to their heart. We actually share playbooks also. So you can definitely reach out to CS leaders and other people and look in these communities. You'll find a lot of help in your job search, and you can get on a place like Pivot, right, and talk to people who are available to you and say, hey, I'm looking to transition into this career, and can you help me understand where my resume needs to be fixed? Or there's so many different things you can talk to a senior leader and understand. So yeah, these are the ways I'd go about doing that as well.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for sharing that, Karan. I think you have mentioned one thing a few times during the course of this conversation, which is do your homework on companies, right? When you're applying to roles. I think that is a very low hanging fruit that a lot of people miss just because, most people don't do it. So if you really are trying to stand out from the crowd, right? One of the easiest things you can do is just position yourself as an expert on the company, what they have been doing. A lot of times, there's plenty of information in the public domain, even on startups these days, because they're all sharing things in the media. I think that goes a long way to kind of making your case for why you would be the right person to hire. But I think that covers everything. We've spent over an hour, I believe, discussing so many different aspects. So thank you again so much, Karan and Bharath, for joining me today. I think we had a really, really insightful session. You all made it come alive, I think, with so many new pieces of information and kind of some myth busters like around, JDs having all these plethora of requirements and whether you need them or don't. I think we covered a lot of ground, and hopefully, people who joined us today also found it helpful. So, I just want to finally talk about the fact that you can go to Pivot. I've shared the link within the chat. You can check it out at mypivot.work. We have a ton of industry experts and mentors like Karan and Bharath who can help you make your transition into customer success or other roles that you're aspiring for. And this is one of the easiest ways to kind of understand more about your target role, target industries, to talk to somebody who's been there, done that, as opposed to just doing generic searches on Google, right? So please feel free to check it out. I've also shared Karan and Bharath's profiles. So feel free to reach out to them directly as well if you'd like. But yes, thank you again, everybody, for joining on a Thursday evening. I hope it was helpful for you, and special thanks again to Bharath and Karan. We will be sharing the recording of this video soon as well, so feel free to share it in your networks. That's it from my end, and I hope everybody has a good rest of the evening.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks, Arjun. Thanks, Karan.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Arjun, and everyone for attending. Bye.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.